Well, more now on the standoff between Russia and the West over Crimea in Ukraine. Let's speak to the political analyst Jason Johnson. He's in Atlanta in the United States. Jason Johnson, the diplomatic pressure on Russia is increasing all the time. Now we have the possibility of a UN Security Council resolution. Is this going to make any difference on the ground, do you think?
No, not at all. One, the Russians can pretty much veto anything that the UN Security Council comes up with. But even rhetorically and ideologically, I mean, China doesn't have a leg to stand on given the things they've done regionally. The United States doesn't have much of a leg to stand on as far as criticizing Russian behavior. So I think this is for the optics so that everyone can say that they have a concern with it. But I don't think any of this is going to change the referendum vote in Crimea on Sunday.
Yeah, and the Ukrainian Prime Minister made an impassioned plea at the United Nations. We also saw the Russian ambassador saying Moscow doesn't want war, but no indication yet that President Putin is backing down.
Not only is there no indication he's backing down, he's actually amassing troops outside the Crimea. And this very same ambassador was on Latvian radio talking about the fact that if there were concerns about ethnic Russians in Latvia and Estonia, they would be willing to offer them citizenship in Russia. So this doesn't appear to be that Putin or his ambassadors are scaling back. They seem to be ratcheting up this conflict in the region.
OK, so we have this controversial referendum planned for Crimea on Sunday. So if there is a yes vote to break away, what happens next, Jason? And what's Moscow's endgame here?
Well, Moscow's endgame is to maintain some position of authority. Look, this is really about a battle between the United States and Russia. The U.S. is trying to veer away from Europe, prepare for a 30-year Cold War economically and militarily with China. And Putin wants to make sure that Europe, and particularly Russia, still stays on the map. So even once this vote occurs, he hasn't thought that far. There isn't a mechanism right now for taxation, for sovereignty. There's not a lot of explanation as to how Crimea would be integrated into Russia. But this is the kind of move he wants to make sure that the United States recognizes that they can't just move away from Europe quite yet and focus only on Asia.
And meanwhile, we've seen these clashes between pro-Russian and pro-Ukraine protesters in Donetsk. That's in the east of the country. The situation remains extremely volatile on the ground, doesn't it?
Yes, extremely volatile. And the Prime Minister of the Ukraine, they just passed a special bill to sort of make a citizens' army to protect Crimea. But of course, that won't do anything against the Russian troops. I don't think that there will necessarily be shots fired on Sunday, but we have to remember the Crimea actually has historically low turnout in elections. It might turn out that many people protest and don't want to participate. So if there was a vote to leave the Ukraine and join Russia, but only 30% of the citizens turn out, I don't know what Putin's really going to be able to do with that. He can't say that he has a mandate from the people of Crimea.
All right, Jason Johnson, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you.
Well, it was in Crimea, at the seaside town of Yalta, where Franklin D. Roosevelt, Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin drew up new European borders after the Second World War.